The golden eagle chick lay motionless on the frozen ground beneath a shattered nest, her nearly translucent eyelids flickering as hypothermia slowly shut down her tiny body. She was perhaps 4 weeks old, covered in downy white feathers, streaked with blood from the fall, one wing bent at an unnatural angle. 15 feet above her, the massive stick nest swayed empty in the brutal Montana wind, and 20 yards beyond that, her mother's body lay still, 3 bullet wounds visible even from a distance. The illegal hunters had fled at dawn when they heard someone approaching. The chick had been alone, crying weakly, for nearly 6 hours. Carter Williams stood 10 feet away from the dying bird, his hands shaking inside his gloves, his breath coming in short clouds in the thin mountain air. It was May 14th, 2018, and he was 3 miles into his morning patrol of the northern sector of Glacier National Park when he had heard the faint distress calls. Now he stood paralyzed, because 7 years ago he had made a decision in weather just like this, and that decision had killed the person who trusted him most. They had been 80 feet from the summit of Denali when the storm hit. Carter Michaels, as he was known then, was one of the most respected alpine guides in North America, and Marcus Reed was his climbing partner of 12 years, his best friend, the godfather to his daughter Lily. The weather window was closing fast. They had 2 choices: push through the deteriorating conditions and summit, or turn back immediately and try again another season. Carter had looked at Marcus, exhausted but trusting, and made the call. "We push. We're so close. We can make it." They did not make it. Marcus fell during the descent, his anchor failing in ice that had become unstable from the temperature shift Carter should have recognized. Carter had reached for him, their gloves touching for 1 impossible second before Marcus disappeared into the white void below. The rescue team found his body 4 days later. The investigation concluded that Carter's decision to continue had been driven by ego rather than sound judgment, that he had prioritized the summit over his partner's safety. They used words like reckless, negligent, criminally irresponsible. His alpine guiding license was revoked, his reputation was destroyed. His wife, Emma, drowning in her own grief for Marcus, who had been like a brother to her, could not look at Carter without seeing the man who had chosen wrong. Their daughter, Lily, 13 at the time and devastated by the loss of her godfather, withdrew into silence. The divorce was finalized within 18 months. Lily chose to live with her mother in Seattle. She answered Carter's letters rarely and his calls never. For 7 years, Carter had lived by one absolute rule: observe, document, never interfere. He took the mountain ranger position at Glacier specifically because it required no leadership decisions, no judgment calls that could cost lives. He walked prescribed routes, noted wildlife activity, reported illegal hunting and camping violations to the main office, and returned each night to his small cabin at the edge of the wilderness. He spoke to almost no one. The isolation felt appropriate, like penance. The mountains that had once been his greatest love now felt like a prison built from his own failures. But this eagle chick was dying. She was dying because of humans, because of cruelty, because of illegal hunters who had killed her mother for sport and left her to freeze. Not because of nature, not because of the natural order, because of murder, and Carter was the only person within 15 miles who could do anything about it. His hand moved toward the chick, then stopped. What if she dies anyway? What if I make the wrong choice and she suffers more because of my interference? What if this is another life lost because I was too arrogant to know my own limitations? The questions screamed through his mind with the same intensity they had on that mountain 7 years ago. But beneath the fear, something else stirred. What if I walk away? What if I let her die here, alone, because I'm too broken to try? Marcus had died because Carter made a choice. This eagle would die because Carter refused to make one, which was worse. The chick's eyes opened briefly, fixed on him with a clarity that felt almost accusatory, then closed again. Her breathing was becoming irregular. Minutes mattered. Every second Carter stood frozen was a second closer to death for her. The decision crystallized with painful clarity. He could fail trying, or he could guarantee failure by doing nothing. 7 years of self-imposed exile had taught him nothing if he had not learned at least that much. Carter moved. He unzipped his jacket, pulled off his fleece mid-layer, and gently wrapped the chick in the warm fabric. She was so light, perhaps 12 ounces, her body temperature dangerously low beneath his fingers. Hypothermia first. Everything else was secondary. He tucked the bundle against his chest, zipped his jacket over her, and began moving quickly back toward his cabin. The wind cut through him immediately without the fleece layer, but he barely felt it. His focus narrowed to the small life pressed against his ribs and the trail beneath his boots. The walk took 23 minutes. It felt eternal. Carter talked to the chick the entire way, his voice hoarse from disuse and emotion. "Stay with me. Just stay with me. We're almost there. You're going to survive this. I promise. I won't fail you. I won't fail again." When he burst through the cabin door, his emergency veterinary training from his years as a wilderness guide kicked in automatically. He had maintained his wilderness first responder certification, even after losing his guiding license, had kept his medical supplies current, even though he swore never to use them. Now he moved with the precision of his old life, the muscle memory of competence he had thought was dead. He lit the wood stove, grabbed towels, gently dried the chick's feathers. Her body temperature was critically low, her breathing shallow and irregular. He created a makeshift incubator from a cardboard box lined with towels, positioned it near the stove where the heat was steady but not overwhelming, and carefully placed her inside. The broken wing would have to wait. If she died of hypothermia, the wing would not matter. He checked her temperature with a digital thermometer, 86 degrees Fahrenheit. A healthy eagle chick should be around 105 degrees. She was dying from the inside out. Carter pulled out a heating pad he kept for his own chronic back pain, set it on low, wrapped it in a towel, and positioned it carefully beneath the chick. Too much heat too fast would send her into shock. He monitored her constantly, adjusting the heating pad, the distance from the stove, checking her temperature every 10 minutes. 87 degrees, 88, 89, rising too slowly. He wrapped her in an additional towel, held her against his chest, his own body heat supplementing the external warming. His hands remembered every technique from years of mountain rescue training, treating hypothermia in climbers, stabilizing injuries in impossible conditions. But this was different. This was not a trained adult who understood what was happening. This was a baby who knew only that she was cold and alone and terrified. At 92 degrees, her breathing steadied slightly. At 95, she opened her eyes and made a sound, a weak chirp that was barely audible but felt like a symphony. Carter found himself crying, tears streaming down his face as he held this tiny creature who was fighting so hard to survive. He had forgotten what it felt like to try to save something. He had forgotten what it felt like to hope. The first 72 hours were brutal. Carter did not sleep more than 30 minutes at a time. Every 2 hours, he fed the chick with a mixture he created from ground turkey, chicken, egg yolk, and specialized vitamins he had to special order from a raptor rehabilitation center in Missoula. The feeding process took nearly half an hour each time. The chick was weak, struggled to swallow, but her survival instinct was fierce. She learned quickly. Between feedings, Carter obsessively monitored her temperature, her breathing rate, the color of her tongue and mouth tissue. He weighed her on a small postal scale, 12.3 ounces on day 1, 12.8 ounces on day 2, 13.4 ounces on day 3. She was gaining. She was fighting. But the broken wing haunted him. On the third day, when the chick's core temperature had stabilized and her strength was returning, Carter finally had to address the fracture. He called the Raptor Center in Missoula, described the injury in detail to Dr. Sarah Kim, one of the few veterinarians in Montana who specialized in birds of prey. She walked him through creating a proper wing wrap, the exact tension needed to immobilize the break without restricting blood flow, how to check for necrosis, when to change the bandaging. Her final words stayed with him. "You've done everything right so far, Carter. Keep doing that. Trust your training. Trust yourself. Trust yourself." The words felt impossible, but hour by hour, day by day, the chick improved. On the 5th day, she opened her eyes fully and looked at Carter with what he could only describe as awareness. On the 8th day, she chirped loudly when he approached with food, the first sign of genuine appetite. On the 10th day, when he unwrapped her wing to check the healing, she flapped it experimentally, and though the movement was weak and obviously painful, it was movement. The bone was setting. Carter began keeping a detailed notebook, documenting everything: feeding times, food amounts, temperature readings, behavior observations, wing mobility progress. If something went wrong, if he made a mistake, he needed to know exactly where he had failed and why. The notebook became his lifeline, proof that he was trying, evidence that he cared. He filled pages with meticulous records, small sketches of the chick's posture, notes about her vocalizations and what they seemed to mean. The act of documentation itself was therapeutic, a way to convince himself that this effort mattered, that precision and attention could prevent the kind of catastrophic error that had killed Marcus. At 6 weeks, the chick weighed 42 ounces and her wing had healed enough to remove the wrap permanently. She was covered now in juvenile plumage, the white down giving way to brown feathers, with the distinctive golden hackles at her neck beginning to show. Her eyes had transitioned from dark grey to the fierce amber gold of an adult golden eagle. She was becoming magnificent. Carter named her Sky, both for the element she belonged to and for the endless Montana sky that had become their shared home. He knew he should not name her, should not encourage attachment, but the name came unbidden one morning when she looked at him with those golden eyes, and once spoken, it could not be taken back. Sky's personality emerged with her strength. She was bold, curious, occasionally stubborn. When Carter tried to restrict her movement to allow the wing to heal properly, she would scream her displeasure, a high-pitched whistle that echoed through the cabin. When he brought food, she would mantle over it possessively, spreading her wings wide in a display that was both adorable and instinctively predatory. She learned to associate the sound of his boots on the floor with feeding time. She learned that his hands meant safety, not threat. She learned to trust him in a way that felt both precious and terrifying, because trust could be betrayed, and Carter knew that better than anyone. At 3 months, Sky was strong enough to begin exercising properly. Carter created a modified flight training routine, using the space behind his cabin, where a natural clearing provided room for short gliding attempts. He would hold Sky on his gloved forearm, walk to the far end of the clearing, and encourage her to glide back toward the cabin where food waited. The first attempts were clumsy, her wings not quite coordinated, her landings more like controlled crashes, but she was learning. Her instincts were awakening. By 4 months, she could glide 30 feet with remarkable control. By 5 months, she achieved true sustained flight for the first time, circling the clearing twice before landing with only moderate awkwardness on Carter's extended arm. The moment she flew, truly flew, Carter felt something crack open inside his chest. Joy, pure, uncomplicated joy. He had not felt anything like it since before Denali. He stood in the clearing with tears streaming down his face, laughing as Sky landed and mantled proudly, clearly aware she had accomplished something extraordinary. This broken bird that he had saved was now doing what she was born to do, and he had been part of making that possible. When Carter resumed his mountain patrols at the 6-month mark, he tried leaving Sky in the cabin. She destroyed everything within reach, knocked over his shelves, somehow tangled herself in his sleeping bag, and screamed so loudly that he heard her a quarter-mile into the wilderness. The second day, he built an outdoor enclosure, thinking she would be content with fresh air and space. She ignored the food he left, ignored the perches he constructed, and simply stared in the direction he had gone, screaming intermittently. The third day, Carter gave up. He opened the cabin door, began his patrol, and Sky launched from her perch and fell into formation 15 feet above his head. She followed him for the entire 8-mile route. When he stopped, she circled overhead. When he moved, she moved. When he entered dense tree cover where she could not easily follow, she would land in the highest visible tree and wait, her eyes tracking him constantly. When he emerged back into open terrain, she would take flight again. They developed an unspoken language. Carter would whistle sharply twice if he saw something dangerous, and Skye would immediately gain altitude and circle higher, out of harm's way. Skye would scream a particular warning call if she spotted something from her aerial vantage that Carter could not see from the ground, usually other hikers or wildlife. When she wanted to confirm she was fine, she would swoop low over his head, close enough that he could feel the displacement of air from her wing beats. Other rangers began reporting sightings. A golden eagle following the mountain ranger on patrol. At first, the reports were met with skepticism. Eagles did not follow humans. It was impossible. But multiple rangers confirmed the same observation. The stories spread. Some rangers were fascinated. Others thought Carter was somehow training the bird illegally, violating wildlife protection laws. Carter explained nothing, confirmed nothing. Skye was not trained. Skye had simply chosen him, and nothing he did could discourage that choice. He had tried leaving her behind. She had rejected that boundary completely. The Park Service sent a wildlife officer to investigate after the 6th reported sighting. The officer, a stern woman named Patricia Valdez, hiked out to find Carter on patrol. She watched from a distance as Skye circled overhead, occasionally diving to investigate something on the ground, always returning to her position above Carter. When Patricia finally approached, Carter explained everything. The rescue, the rehabilitation, the unintentional bond. He expected citations, possibly criminal charges for interfering with wildlife. Instead, Patricia was quiet for a long moment, watching Skye circle above them, then said, "That eagle is fully flighted, fully healthy, and choosing to be here. That's not captivity. That's something else. I'll note in my report that you appear to be coexisting with a wild raptor who has imprinted moderately on a human presence but maintains full autonomy. Don't make me regret this, Williams." Carter's transformation paralleled Skye's growth. For 7 years, he had been existing, not living. Skye gave him purpose. She was proof that he could make the right call under pressure. She was healthy, powerful, thriving in ways that seemed miraculous. Every day she survived was evidence that he had not failed, that he could trust his own judgment in moments that mattered, that he was not the broken, incompetent disaster the Denali investigation had declared him to be. He began writing letters to Lily again. For years, his letters had been brief, apologetic, maintaining distance. Now they changed. He told her about Skye, about the rescue, the rehabilitation, the daily patrols. He sent photos of Skye in flight, perched on his glove, soaring against the Montana sky. He wrote about fear and second chances, about learning to trust himself again. Lily's responses were cautious at first, but gradually warmed. She was 19 now, studying environmental science at the University of Washington. She wrote that she had been thinking about what happened on Denali, that she had learned enough about mountaineering now to understand how impossible that decision had been, how the investigation's conclusions had been harsh to the point of cruelty. She wrote that she missed him. She wrote that maybe she could visit during summer break. The letters became a lifeline Carter had not known he needed. Skye had given him back his capability. Lily was giving him back his connection to the person he used to be, the father who had existed before Denali broke everything. 2 years became 3. 3 became 5. Skye was now a full adult, 28 pounds of apex predator with a 7-foot wingspan. She ruled the airspace over Carter's patrol sector. Other birds gave her wide berth. Small mammals would hide at her shadow. She could take down prey twice her size. She was fast, intelligent, and absolutely lethal. But every morning without fail, she appeared above Carter's cabin as he began patrol. She was his shadow cast in feathers and sky. The stories about them achieved local legend status. Hikers would post photos online. The solitary ranger with the golden eagle overhead. Wildlife photographers made pilgrimages to Glacier, hoping to capture images of their partnership. A small documentary crew spent 3 days following them, creating a short film that aired on a regional PBS station. The segment was only 8 minutes long and did not show Carter's face clearly, but it captured the essence of their bond, the trust, the communication, the impossible partnership between species. Lily saw the documentary. Her next letter was different. "Dad," she wrote, I saw you with Sky. I saw what you've become. I was wrong to pull away. I was angry at what happened, angry at the investigation, angry at losing Uncle Marcus, and I took it all out on you. But I see now that you've been punishing yourself more than anyone else ever could. Can I come visit? I need to see this with my own eyes. I need to meet Sky. I need to know my father again." Carter sat on his cabin steps, the letter trembling in his hands, and for the first time since Marcus died, he felt something that terrified him more than failure. He felt hope, real hope, the kind that made you vulnerable, the kind that could destroy you if it was taken away. Sky was perched on a branch 20 feet above him, preening her flight feathers in the late afternoon sun. The Montana wilderness stretched endlessly in every direction, and Carter realized he was ready. Ready to let someone see him, not as the failure from Denali, but as the man who had saved a life and been saved in return. He had no idea that within months everything would change, that nature would make a demand Sky could not ignore, that he would face a choice even more impossible than the one he had made on that mountain. That loving Sky would require the one thing he did not know if he could do. He would have to let her go. And it would break him in ways Denali never had. The sounds began on a cold morning in late February, during Sky's 6th year. Deep, resonant whistles that echoed across the valleys, territorial calls that made every bird within miles go silent. Carter recognized them immediately. Male golden eagle, and not just any male. These were the calls of a mature, powerful bird, claiming territory and seeking a mate. Sky heard them too. Carter watched as her entire body went rigid, her head swiveling toward the source of the sound. She made a noise he had never heard from her before, a complex series of chirps and whistles that seemed to mix curiosity with something deeper, something instinctive. Then she looked at Carter, looked back toward the distant calls, and for the first time in 6 years, hesitated before following him on patrol. "Go," Carter said softly, his heart already beginning to break. "It's okay. Go see." But Sky stayed. She took her position above him as always, circling in her familiar pattern. Yet throughout the patrol, her attention was divided. She would drift higher than usual, circle wider, her head constantly turning toward the northwestern peaks where the male's calls originated. Carter knew what was happening. Nature was calling her, and nature was infinitely more powerful than any bond with a human. Over the next 3 weeks, the male's presence became impossible to ignore. Carter found fresh kills left on prominent rocks, territorial displays that were not Sky's work. He saw scratch marks on tree trunks, at heights that indicated a bird substantially larger than Sky. He found massive molted feathers that dwarfed Sky's. The male was huge, probably 14 pounds, prime breeding age, and he was actively courting. Sky's behavior changed. Some mornings she would not appear until hours after dawn, and when she did, she seemed agitated, restless, unable to settle. Other mornings, she would stick so close to Carter that she barely left his immediate vicinity, as if fighting against her own instincts. Her divided loyalty was visible in every action. Carter watched it with growing dread. He had always known this day would come, though he had let himself pretend otherwise. Sky was 6 years old. She was in her prime. She should mate. She should have chicks. She should live a complete eagle life, not spend her days following a human on mountain patrols because of a bond formed in trauma. One morning, Sky did not appear at all. Carter waited an hour past his usual patrol time, then 2 hours. Nothing. He searched the nearby areas, calling with their whistle signals. Silence. She was gone. She returned 3 days later, and Carter could read the conflict in her body language. She landed on her usual perch outside his cabin, but she was different. There was a wildness in her eyes that had not been there before, an awareness of something beyond their small partnership. That night, as Carter lay awake with Skye perched on the roof beam above his bed where she had slept for 6 years, he had the realization that nearly stopped his heart. She would stay. Not because she wanted to anymore, but because 6 years of conditioning had taught her that her place was with him. She would stay out of loyalty, out of habit, out of a bond formed when she was too young to understand what freedom meant, and in staying, she would never have chicks, never fulfill her biological imperative, never truly be what an eagle should be. Carter was doing to her exactly what he had done on Denali. He was prioritizing his own needs, his own fear of loss, above what was right for someone else. The parallel was so clear it physically hurt. 7 years ago, he had wanted the summit so badly that he had ignored the signs telling him to turn back. He had risked Marcus because the alternative was admitting failure. Now he was holding on to Skye because the alternative was being alone again, was losing the one thing that had made him whole. He was being selfish in a different way, but the result would be the same. Skye would be lost, just imprisoned rather than dead, trapped by loyalty to a human who loved her too much to see he was destroying her. Carter made his decision that night. It was the hardest decision he had ever made, harder even than the choice to save her as a chick, because this one would hurt him far more than any failure could. He would force her to leave. He would sever the bond before it trapped her forever. He would break both their hearts because it was the only way to save her. The next morning, when dawn broke and Skye appeared on her perch waiting for patrol, Carter did not go outside. He stayed inside the cabin, door closed, window shades drawn. He listened to her confused chirps, her questioning whistles. She waited. He heard her land on the roof, then on the porch railing, then right outside the door. She made their communications sound, the specific call that meant, "Are you okay?" Carter sat on the floor with his back against the door, hand pressed against the wood, and said nothing. Skye waited all day. As evening fell, she finally left, but returned at dawn the next morning. The pattern repeated. Day 3, day 4. Each morning she would arrive. Call for him. Wait. Each evening she would leave. Each time she returned, her calls seemed more urgent, more confused. Where was her human? Why would he not come out? What had changed? Carter sat inside in the darkness and listened to her, trying to understand, and he had never felt more cruel in his entire life. On the 7th morning, Skye did not come. Carter waited, listening, but heard nothing. He went outside at noon, searched the sky, called with their signals. Silence. She was gone. He had successfully driven her away. He had made the right choice, and it felt like the worst thing he had ever done. Carter collapsed on the cabin steps and wept, great heaving sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than grief. He had done it. He had let her go. He had put her needs above his own. This was not failure. This was love. But love felt exactly like loss, and loss felt exactly like Denali all over again. 4 months passed. Carter went through the motions, patrol, document, return, sleep. But the sky felt empty without Skye. He saw other eagles, documented their presence, did his job. But it all felt hollow. He was functioning, not living. Lily wrote that she was planning to visit in 6 weeks. Carter did not respond immediately. How could he explain that the eagle Lily wanted to meet was gone, that the bond that had healed him no longer existed, that he was alone again, and this time the loneliness felt permanent? In the 5th month, Carter began seeing new activity in Skye's old territory. Scratch marks on trees at 2 different heights. Prey remains left at a massive nest being constructed in a Douglas fir on a cliff face. Carter rarely patrolled. 2 sets of molted feathers. She had mated. She was building a home. And based on the timing, she was probably brooding eggs. Carter felt joy flood through him, sharp and bittersweet. He had made the right choice. Skye was living a complete life. The pain of losing her was worth this outcome. He never tried to approach the nest. He never tried to see her. Observation only. That had always been his rule, and now it mattered more than ever. She had her own life, her own family. He would not interfere. In the 6th month, on a patrol route Carter rarely took, disaster struck. He was crossing a steep snowfield at 9,000 feet, carefully testing each step when the entire slope shifted. Avalanche. Carter had perhaps 2 seconds of awareness before the snow swallowed him, tumbling him downslope in a chaos of white violence. He slammed into a boulder, felt his ribs crack, felt his ankle twist and snap. Then he was buried. The world went dark and cold and silent. Carter fought his way to the surface, gasping, pain shrieking through his entire body. He had been carried 300 yards down the mountain. His left ankle was shattered, bent at an angle that made his stomach turn. 3, maybe 4 ribs broken on his right side. His radio was gone, torn away in the slide. His pack was gone. He was alone at 9,000 feet with injuries that meant he could not walk, in a location where no patrol route would bring anyone for at least 3 days. Even if he could crawl, even if the pain did not make him black out, he would not make it off the mountain before hypothermia or his injuries killed him. He tried anyway. He made it perhaps 40 feet in 20 minutes before he had to stop, vision swimming from pain and shock. He could hear sounds in the distance. Coyotes, possibly wolves, drawn by the disturbance of the avalanche, by his blood on the snow. Predators sensed vulnerability. He was prey now. Carter lay back in the snow and looked at the impossibly blue Montana sky and thought about Marcus, about Lily, about Sky. He had tried. He had saved one life. He had learned to let go. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was redemption sufficient for the mistakes he had made. Then he heard it. A sound he would have recognized anywhere, in any context, after 6 years of daily companionship. The scream of a golden eagle, sharp and angry and unmistakable. Sky's voice. Carter tried to sit up, could not, settled for turning his head. And there she was, circling 200 feet above him, her distinctive flight pattern, the white patches on her underwings visible even from this distance. She screamed again, the sound echoing across the mountains, and then she dove. She did not land near him. She gained altitude and began circling in a specific pattern Carter had seen before, the pattern she used when she had found something significant on patrol and wanted to draw his attention. But this time, the thing she had found was him, and she was not trying to tell him, she was trying to tell someone else. Sky circled and screamed and circled and screamed, and Carter understood. She was marking his location. She was calling for help in the only way she could. 2 other eagles appeared in the sky, larger than Sky, flying in formation with her. One had to be her mate. Carter did not know who the other was. They joined her circling pattern, all 3 birds, creating an aerial display that would be visible for miles, all 3 screaming in chorus. Carter lay in the snow and watched through tears as Sky, who he had released 6 months ago, who had her own life now, who owed him nothing, brought help. It took 4 hours. The circling eagles drew the attention of a climbing party, 3 ridges over. They investigated, found Carter, radioed for rescue. The helicopter arrived at dusk. As the medics loaded Carter onto the stretcher, he looked up one last time. Sky was still circling overhead, but higher now, preparing to leave. Their eyes met across the distance. She screamed once, a sound that felt like goodbye, and I'm fine, and you saved me first, and now we're even all at once. Then she wheeled away toward the northwest peaks, the 2 other eagles following, and was gone. In the hospital in Kalispell, drugged on morphine with his ankle in external fixation and his ribs wrapped, Carter told the story to the ranger who came to take his statement. He told it all. The rescue 6 years ago, the bond, the decision to let her go, the avalanche, Sky's return. The ranger, a young man named Tom, who Carter barely knew, listened with his mouth open. She came back, he kept saying. She brought help. That's impossible. That's. He could not finish the sentence. It was impossible, and it had happened anyway. 3 weeks later, Lily arrived. Carter was on crutches, his ankle in a walking boot, ribs still tender but healing. His daughter was 20 now, beautiful and confident in ways that made his chest ache with pride and regret. They sat outside his cabin that evening, watching the sunset turn the peaks orange and gold. Lily had been quiet most of the day, processing everything, seeing him for the first time in 5 years, hearing the full story of Sky, understanding the man her father had become. "Tell me about her," Lily finally said softly. "Tell me about Sky. Tell me everything." Carter did. He told her about the rescue in the snow, about the 72 hours of terror, about watching Sky learn to fly, about their years of partnership, about the impossible decision to let her go, about the avalanche, about Sky's return. And as he spoke, Lily cried, understanding for the first time the full weight of what her father had carried for 7 years. "You saved her twice," Lily said when he finished. "Once when you picked her up in the snow, and once when you let her go. Dad, you did make the right choice on Denali. I know that now. The conditions changed too fast. The investigation was looking for someone to blame, and you were the easiest target. You didn't kill Uncle Marcus, the mountain did, but you've been punishing yourself like you did." She reached over and took his hand. "You can stop now. You've proven whatever you needed to prove. Sky proved it. I see it. You can trust yourself again." Carter could not speak past the tightness in his throat. His daughter understood. After 7 years of exile, someone finally understood. As they sat in comfortable silence, 3 shapes appeared in the sky to the northwest, silhouetted against the sunset. Sky and her family, circling once over the cabin, high and distant but unmistakable. They did not approach. They simply circled, a brief acknowledgement, then continued on toward their territory. Lily grabbed Carter's arm, her voice hushed with awe. "Is that her?" Carter nodded, unable to speak. "That's Sky. She's letting me know she's fine. She's showing me her family." They watched until the eagles disappeared into the distance. Lily leaned her head against her father's shoulder, and Carter realized that this moment, this precise moment, was what redemption actually felt like. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just quiet and real and earned through years of pain and growth and impossible choices. Sky had not saved him by staying. Sky had saved him by leaving, by living, by proving that love did not mean possession or control. Love meant showing up when it mattered, then trusting enough to let go. Love meant making the hard choice, even when it destroyed you, because it was right. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is trust yourself again. Sometimes saving a life means letting it go. Sometimes, if you are very, very lucky, what you release comes back to you not because it must, but because it chooses to. And that makes all the difference.